So I'm going to hand over now to Richard Byrne. So Pete Franken was in the program, but he was sounding so fluey this morning that all COVID rules said that he had to stay away from the venue and he couldn't really speak on the platform. So Richard, welcome, and I'm going to hand over to you to just share sort of some reflections on part 2 of Ideas 2020.
Yes, good afternoon, and also reiterate Peter Franken's apology for not being here. He has got a serious lung infection, so I think, well, me particularly pleased that he's not sharing that with anyone. So, but what he has asked is for me to cover off a little bit of the areas that were covered off by him being an NZDF representative. So, and I'm happy to take questions on across the whole information domain, but I will probably have to defer if the questions get too hard in an area that I'm not familiar with. I'd also like to acknowledge that in this reflection, I've learned a lot on Line of Defence magazine chief editor Nicholas Dynam's insightful analysis. So I've had access to some of his thoughts, and I've incorporated some of that into what I'm just about to say. So as an exercise in early engagement, Ideas 2020 is set out to provide industry and academia with an opportunity to be involved from the start in discussions around a range of new capability areas. There was also an acknowledgement of the importance of partnering in relation to designing and delivering the New Zealand information domain within the Defence Force, and also to provide input into the future Defence Information Domain operating model and the types of relationships and workforce arrangements needed to support this new domain going forward. We have heard from our integrated project team leads over the course of Ideas 2020 in relation to particular capability areas in which Defence is looking to industry and to academia to deliver, and my predecessor within the information domain within the Ministry of Defence, and Group Captain Franken as the NZDF Information Domain Director, also posed a range of questions to industry and academia, which I think have been fully, in my review of what's been delivered during Ideas 2020, I think you've more than met the challenge of answering some of those questions. Those challenges related to providing the necessary thought leadership to take things forward, and I think we've got enough data sitting on this platform to keep us busy for a number of weeks to continue to review and then start in slower time some of the engagements which we're all looking forward to. The reality of the world is that it's moving faster and in ever more connected ways in which data, the building blocks of information, will be the single most important measure of a nation's geostrategic power. In the information age, the ability to harness data instantly and to protect it from proliferation, from a proliferating array of information weapons is paramount. Accordingly, we turn to expert insights which have been articulated throughout the Ideas 2020. We have significant ground to make up and some tough choices to make within Defence, and it's within this context that the New Zealand Defence Force and the Ministry of Defence have turned our focus towards the information domain. Massive amounts of data will need to be collected for analysis in real time, and Teradata's Stephen Dobbs captured this in saying that data we'll be collecting won't just be growing in size, but also in diversity, including all kinds of geospatial data, non-traditional, semi-structured data, and that the key here is that in the future we'll need different kinds of processing capability beyond the squared tables and columns, the column types of models that we engage with today, to enable us to do more advanced analytics. Mark McIntyre from Microsoft noted that the asymmetric nature of data enabled interstate competition that becomes a potential battle space for those smaller nations looking to project regional power. This domain, it's cheap to operate in, much cheaper than having to afford the upkeep of a military, Mark explained. You can hide. It's really hard to attribute in the security landscape, and attribution difficulties mean that adversaries can hide in cyberspace. But in the data-rich battle space of the future, with industry's assistance, we would hope that hiding will become increasingly difficult. In identifying the information domain as a fourth domain for warfare, New Zealand has followed other militaries in moving beyond the previous three-dimension classification of maritime, land, and air. The new domain effectively acknowledges the role played by data as an enabler, a weapon, and a vulnerability, and the networks and spectrums that data inhabits as new battle spaces. But at the same time, the introduction of the information domain presents us with questions around the ongoing categorization of domains of warfare. What is the increasingly talked about space domain? Where does it fit into New Zealand's thinking? For example, the oft-mooted human domain, where does it sit within our domain thinking? The key issue here is domains are not mutually exclusive, and while concepts such as multi-domain operations seek to account for this, one domain doesn't necessarily start where another ends. It's a problem that is taxonomic, its capability, and it affects doctrinal dimensions. You'll be pleased to hear that we have made some progress in this area. Some key decisions have been made around the establishment of the information domain within Defence, including the appointment of a senior stakeholder to act as an information domain champion. Unfortunately, I can't divulge any further information at this point, and we'll have to wait for the formal announcement in due course. The other areas of interest involve space. While some militaries identify space as a distinct domain in the New Zealand context, this will be incorporated within the air domain to form the aerospace domain. So in future, we will have maritime, land, aerospace, and information domains within the New Zealand Defence Force. An important aspect of the conversations that have been taking place revolves around the workforce. And as humans, whether we're soldiers or civilians, we all have increasingly complex relationships with data and information. It's true to say that we're both consumers of data and we are biological and intellectual sources of data. And as such, our data literacy is no longer optional. If we are lacking in data literacy skills as an organization, how can we confidently face the information age? We must adapt and evolve our culture to be data-driven to meet future challenges. This is an interesting area in terms of where will our workforces be generated from in the future. And there has been lots of conversations taking place within Defence, and almost certainly this is going to require new thinking in how we employ and the terms of engagement of our workforces going forward. That's both in the Ministry of Defence and in the military sense. We'll have to start thinking about potentially key workers in this space moving in and out of militaries to maintain technical currency. And, you know, I would, having been around IT for a number of years, I would question whether the vast majority of the IT specialists would be keen to be digging a trench in the future, which is currently part of the idea of being within the army. The other area that we're going to need some innovative thinking is how we, our commercial relationships and how we contract for services going forward. And I use the term services because I think we will almost certainly in the information domain move away from large CapEx provisions, and we'll move more into the provision of services. And the more innovative we can be in that space, given the financial situation we're going to be in going forward, is going to be absolutely critical to continue to deliver within the information domain. Having said the information domain, the IPTs, the integrated project teams that have stood up in this domain, at this point in time, we only have one which is actually has a capital investment, that is the fixed high frequency radio refresh, which is underway and being delivered with a contract with Babcock New Zealand and Babcock UK. All of the others are pending investment decisions through the business case process. So we have a very, very tight schedule going forward in the first and second quarter of next year. And of course, a recently elected government, to some degree, is still finding its feet, and we are still finding our way with what the likely investment in defence is going to be going forward. But as everyone can imagine, that is going to be a very, very difficult environment to navigate in the future. That's pretty much all I was wanting to say in terms of, other than I think this has been a really, really successful engagement from our perspective. We've got, as I say, we've got more than we possibly could have dreamed of in terms of the level of engagement from industry and academia. And certainly from my perspective, I look forward to the engagements going forward. And as always, I would be happy to take any questions.
Sorry, it's horrible being left hanging there, isn't it?
That's quite all right. I should have probably given more of a lead in to saying I'm happy to take questions. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. So now, have we got any questions through the platform? If not, that was thank you very much, because that was a much more extensive reflection than I had been hoping for. So I'm delighted at the thought that went into it, because I know from talking to Nick, getting your head around the what next is a big issue. So thank you so much for being with us today and for all your support through the running of the event, because I think the demonstration of government and industry genuinely working together to solve the problems was demonstrated in spades at that event. All good. So now, final last chance. Any other questions? I've started talking about Ideas 2021, which both terrifies me and excites me at the same time. So we're looking forward to talking with you in the new year about what's next.